Okay, so this other piece though, and I had a question, and this is pure theory, that there's an interesting thing that kicks in with this sugar diet. We've seen it in studies with sucrose, this FGF21 thing, speaking of getting hung up on mechanisms. But there's an interesting thing, but it makes me wonder less about this whole FGF21 thing, which we can talk about, but more so, people claim when they have really high amounts of carbohydrates in the absence of fat, their metabolism goes almost into this hyperdrive. Like they feel it, they notice it. I've experienced it too. I know exactly what they're talking about. It is a real thing. Don't know how long it sticks around for. Don't know if it downregulates. But it makes me wonder, makes me question the calorie model a little bit sometimes. Because it makes me question not only the calorie model, but also the carb insulin model. Because I say, wait a minute, I've never been a complete carb insulin, theory guy. Like I've never looked in the sense of like calories don't matter. It's all about the insulin index and all this. I think that there's flaws there too, because I have seen some people doing like 3,000-4,000 calories with this, like going really high, right? And bodies shredding up and operating, like kicking into this metabolic overdrive that's a little bit inexplainable.
I think there's all kinds of considerations that somebody that counts calories would have, and right away they would say, oh, they're probably miscalculating. They're not understanding, how to track their macros or whatever. I do think there's something at play there, and I do think it's important to review. Even like people switching from one diet to another, maybe put that aside for a moment, because diet is like such a religion for some people, and they really get hung up on that. But if you just think about, like, how come one guy who's 5'8", 200 pounds can have 3,000 or 3,500 calories, and this other guy who's the exact same dimensions and the exact same age and has very similar activity levels, why is this other guy, he can only lose weight when he's on like 2,000 calories? Like, those are things that we should look into more, and those are things we should question more. I know there's like research, I know there's information out there about this stuff, but I haven't really heard it talked about until the whole sugar diet thing started coming into play. I do know there's some people, there's Jay Campbell, there's Mike Fave, there's people that are in the Ray Peat camp, and there's information about things being like pro-metabolic, or they'll say bioenergetic, but you're kind of like, what does some of that mean? How do I do that? And there's some controversy on like, how do you do that? How do you, quote unquote, rev up your metabolism? Unfortunately, I think like one of the first places to start would be like eat more food.
Yes.
Which most people probably aren't willing to do because they're probably nervous or scared to do that. And then we could, nitpick and say, well, what macronutrient would be like the best, or what type of macronutrient, whether it's fructose or would it be, protein, or would it be a particular amino acid, or is it trying to avoid a particular amino acid? Like in the case of sugar fasting, some people believe that one of the key things to the whole sugar diet is to stay away from like isoleucine. And it's like, that's really interesting thing by not having isoleucine, we're potentially increasing this FGF21. But I think there's a cascade of so many other things that happen in the background that we just don't know much about. Yeah. So we really have to, a lot of times, just kind of, feel our way around a little bit. We have to sort of just like almost guess, which sounds stupid in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's, since talking to you about this thing, I've done like sort of these intermittent, like, okay, I'll take a day and do this, right? Like I'm not doing it for days on end, but I'll periodically say, okay, a day that I'm fasting, sure, I'll do this. So I'll just have honey and water, instead of just water on my fast, just to see what the heck it does. I have honey anyway, but let me just substitute my own kind of experiment with it. One thing that I've noticed is there's two types of hunger for me. There's a hunger that is this insatiable hunger that comes sometimes 2 days after a long run, where it's like just like the body's just like, no, energy demand, need fuel, and it's innate and unavoidable. It's like, it's unconscious hunger, okay? That is just like, you all of a sudden look back at the day and you're like, why do I still feel like I need to eat? And eating feels right. It doesn't feel like it's just hunger. It's just like, no, like I gotta do this, right? And then there's the hunger when you feel like your metabolism is cranking. You feel that way, and you're like, I'm hungry, but I know this hunger is burning fat right now. I'm gonna ride it. You know what I'm talking about? Like there's a different feeling, and that is actually what I did feel. Like I could feel that. Again, it's not something like for me. It's like okay, yeah, I'll fuck around with it. And that's what I noticed. I'm like, okay, I was very hungry. Maybe that would go away, but the hunger was different. The hunger was a kind of like, yeah, this is doing something. Like metabolic rate, maybe it's just a massive shock to my system, right? My body's just not knowing what to do. So it makes me wonder if there is a non-exercise activity thermogenesis aspect that like I'm not realizing. Like, am I moving more? I wasn't noticing if I was fidgeting more. I didn't particularly notice my body heat going up. Like I was just like, and even if it did, like unless you're running something like D&D or something like that, you're not going to have this crazy high body temperature that's going to incinerate calories. Like dietary induced thermogenesis is like less than 2%, I think. So of the metabolic rate. So it's really a small amount. So even if you were to like crank this lever to 11, I don't think the dietary induced thermogenesis is what's making it work.
You're right, and it probably might not. It might be hard for somebody, or it might be like. It might be an experiment gone wrong if someone's trying to bring their calories from 2,000 to 4,000 without having the right knowledge. I mean, we do know there's some ways that we can increase metabolic rate. One of them would be to gain some muscle mass, but that's like super slow. Muscle mass is like an interesting one because like I don't know what the numbers are, but because a lot of times people are like, oh, steroids, they make the diet like easier. Well, of course it makes it easier. There's a lot of reasons for that. Like for somebody that's enhanced, like myself, which I always tell people I'm enhanced. It's not like that's new. The diet is what's new. So that's how I've gotten leaner over the last couple months has been this new dietary intervention. Previously I was doing like carnivore and keto and stuff, but it was like, for me, I know I could like lower my calories. I also know that I could like lower my fat and just basically, have protein. But it didn't feel comfortable enough for me to do it. What I mentioned earlier is still important to me. I want to try to figure out a way to continue to get leaner and reach some of my goals, but have it be at least somewhat comfortable. Yeah. I don't mind some discomfort, but you know what I mean. You kind of feel like you're wrecking yourself to some degree when you start to like really fast and you start to dive into some of those things. And I think actually like kind of just flip this whole thing on its head and just start to think about it a completely different way. And how do I produce more? Yeah. How do I be more productive? How do I turn every step that I take for the day like a little bit more powerful? How do I take every rep and every set that I do in the gym and have it just be a little bit more crisp, a little bit maybe more explosive, or whatever it might be, or just even be, I think food is motivating. Not just motivating like eat, like, oh, there's pizza. Like, of course it's motivating in that way, it's fun. But motivating in a sense that like it can give you motivation when you have the energy. If somebody calls you up and they're like, hey, what are we training today? And you're like, oh, you're all like kind of down because maybe a couple days earlier, maybe you did run 10 miles. And maybe yesterday you trained legs pretty hard, and maybe on that day you like fasted or something too. And now you're just kind of like eventually, what I always say about like your nutrition or some of these plans or things that people are going to do, a lot of times your luck is going to run out. So these dietary interventions and these different things that we try, these experiments, they're great, but we also know they're not going to work forever. And there's not one diet that works forever. And even people that try to say, oh, well, a well-balanced diet works forever, it's like, no, it changes a lot. Like, so if somebody just said, oh, I follow Mike Dolce's diet, or I follow vertical diet, or I follow like whatever other balanced diet, you don't even have to really give it a name, but I eat like whole foods and I don't need to make any changes. It's like, well, what if you want to get shredded? Well, what if you want to get bigger? How at what point do we say that the diet's now changed? Like if you go from 2,000 calories to 3,000 calories, you're increasing something. You're increasing your protein, you're increasing your fat, your carbs, or whatever it might be. So the diet is changing, even if you want to try to deny the fact that it's changing. Okay, you didn't switch from carnivore to being vegan. Yeah. It wasn't that kind of change, but it still has to. There still has to be like manipulation.
I like what you're saying. It's like some of the one of my favorite sort of spiritual guys that I listen to. His name's James Lowe. He's pretty popular. He's an older guy, Scottish guy. You know, he talks about these things. He talks about the human consciousness and how we view things. And it's kind of funny how, yeah, you didn't switch from vegan to carnivore, carnivore to vegan, but it's kind of like we look at like, okay, well, you know, what is that in your hand? Okay, it's a ball. Okay, well, it could be that ball. What that ball is all depends on the context of what you are doing that ball as, right? Is this ball a baseball? It's going to hit you with a bat, then it's for sport. Or you're going to throw it and try to hurt somebody, then it's a weapon, right? So it's just like all about the framework in which you're viewing it. And the diet is kind of similar with that too, right? So it's like, okay, if I'm having 100 grams of carbohydrates and it's in the context of low carb spread throughout the day, or I'm having 100 grams of carbohydrates and it's consolidated. See what I mean? It's a completely different context, even though it's that same 100 grams of carbs, but it's just applied in a different place, given a different name, and given a different job. And that's a loose example, but it goes all the way that way. So you're talking about, okay, if someone is consuming 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat, and they just increase their ratios at the exact macronutrient ratio, but they increase them all 20% because they increase their calorie. Okay, well, the world is different at 300 carbs or 400 carbs compared to 200 carbs. What if that is a threshold that something is completely changing inside your body? So your diet did actually change. You were eating more, yes, but you're looking at those calories in isolation as if calories are the only thing that matters.
If it wasn't a change, then your body wouldn't change.
Exactly.
Right, so there's some change going on because there's a hormonal thing going on. There's shifts in body weight. There's shifts in all kinds of the different things that we have going on in our body. And again, I like to kind of think of that idea of like, how do we figure out a way to like sort of just produce more, like be able to produce more energy rather than, I think we're always thinking about like reducing energy.
We are.
And not everybody all the time. There's some people that talk about these things, but for the most part, it's like we have to like reduce energy or we have to spend energy. And how do we just figure out a way where we're not even really necessarily spending it up front, we're just allowing our body to feel more encouraged to just go do a bunch of every single day and just to kick some ass every single day.